everyone. Please be seated. Let the record reflect the presence of the jury, Ms. Smith, and counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Sorry we're late starting this morning, but I had to take care of some matters, and we've taken care of them, and we're ready to go. The usual question, did anybody have any issue with any contact with media? Doesn't look like it. Good. All right. So we left off. We were in Detective Ramirez's testimony. I think the state was getting ready to play an audio exhibit. Which exhibit was it again?
207, Your Honor.
207? And has 207 been admitted yet? I have it as being admitted, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So you're going to publish that to the jury. And so, Ms. Andrews, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Are you ready to? Okay. Do you have the phone number that we're dialing? That's it. Can you hear that? No, of course you can't.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes?
Tammi?
No. This is Elizabeth.
Oh, okay, hold on.
It's very faint. Can we turn the volume up?
Don't forget to register to vote. Your voice counts. For information, contact the Maricopa County Elections Office at 602-506. Site at www.recorder.maricopa.com. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello?
Tammy?
Yes.
Hi, it's Elizabeth. Did my friend reach you? Did the three-way... Did she say it was a three-way call?
No, she just said she had a call from Elizabeth.
Okay. Yeah, she hung up. I was able to do... I used another girl's booking number to get through to you and do a three-way call so it wouldn't be able to be recorded because we're not allowed to do three-way calls, but there's a way to do it so it can't be recorded. So, yes, I want to let you know that firsthand, okay? All right, so needless to say, I am very, very upset at you. What you've been doing and saying I deceived you on the news and all that. And I really can't hide all of this anymore, your involvement in this and all the plans you made, and you're completely denying everything and saying you weren't involved.
Wait, what plans did I make? What are you talking about?
The plans, and you offered to hide me in Tennessee. You set up everything.
No, that was said. We told the police all that. They know that. And we researched to see if you could change jurisdictions, and we found out that you couldn't. So then we told you need to come back. You can't change jurisdictions. They have all the proof in our computers. They can't, and we told them that from the beginning. And people have asked, do you feel deceived by her? And we've said, you know what? At times we do, but we don't know what to believe anymore because we don't know what to believe, And we've told people, though, over and over that we believe that baby's alive, and we believe that you did what you said, found the family and gave them the baby.
Yeah, you set it all up. They were your friends.
No, they weren't.
Yes.
Then who are they? Then what's their names if they're my friends?
I don't know. You set it all up in San Antonio.
Okay. Why would you be lying about that now, saying that we set that up? Why would you say that? We have you on tape saying that you met these people in the park. We have you on tape saying that you had no idea that we had nothing to do with this. Now, why all of a sudden would you lie? And this is the thing. You can lie about it all you want, but we have solid proof and evidence. and they got that evidence a week ago, and now they know that we didn't have anything to do with it.
That's not true, Tammy.
Elizabeth, there is something seriously wrong with
there's
you.
There's nothing wrong with me. You're the one going around acting like a crazy person. You set all this up, and all I did was do what you told me to do.
And that's a lie, and we have solid proof, and the police already know that. We have solid proof that we did not do any of that. And the reason that we think that you deceived us is because the police are telling us that you are saying that we set this up. And we're like, what? Why would she say that? We have her on recordings saying that we had nothing to do with this. And you said, your exact words were what? Why would they think you had anything to do with this? You know, it's all on recording, Elizabeth. News Channel 5 has that whole...
Yeah, the recording that you ambushed me at my grandfather's. I didn't know what to say.
You didn't know what to say? You didn't want to...
No, I wasn't expecting Channel 5 to be recording me. You just came in, and I had, I didn't think any of this was going to happen.
Elizabeth, please just tell people, you've got to remember. If you remembered mine and Jackson Hannah's name after the very first time we met, you have to remember this family that you gave the baby to. You have to. I know you know it. And they're going to connect the dots. Somebody helped you.
Yeah,
and they know now that it wasn't us because we have solid proof. But you're now looking at your grandma and your grandpa. So, I'm hoping that, if whoever did help you, hopefully you come out sooner than later and they don't get in as much trouble as they could get in if you don't come up now, because they're looking at phone records.
They should be looking at your phone records.
Right. And now we looked at all of our phone records, and since the beginning, we told them, yes, we were going to help her go to Nashville. We had a house there. We had my stepson's condo there. We told them that from day one.
It was me who didn't want to go to Nashville.
You're right. You're right.
So
you didn't.
You talked
You're right.
about the San Antonio friends.
I talked about San Antonio friends?
Yes, you're
okay. You're
Jack's
not
friends.
Elizabeth, I don't know anyone in San Antonio. They already did the research and found out that I don't know anyone in San Antonio.
It's just
that
Jack's
nobody.
Friends,
there are no dots that connect me to you in San Antonio. Huh?
Then it was Jack's friends, like you said.
Like who said it was Jack's friends?
It was Jack's friends. He was the one who had the great friends there.
Who told you that?
You.
I told you Jack had great friends in San Antonio.
Yes, and you were so happy that I went there.
Oh, right. That's right. Jack's saying that's right. But you didn't even know his name. He didn't give you their name.
So
if you needed help, he would let you know who that friend is. We've told the police that since day one. They already talked to this guy. He's a preacher. He's a very famous singer. He's a very famous gospel singer. They went to his house. They looked at his phone records. You never called the guy because you don't even know the guy's name.
No, I don't know the guy's name. You guys didn't give me his name, and you didn't give me his phone number, and I never did call him.
You're right. So why are you saying that we set you up with a couple?
Because you guys called him. I didn't call him.
We didn't call him, and he didn't call you. Why are you saying that we set you up with a couple that we didn't set you up with?
Yes, you did. You wanted the baby, and you had a million plans how to get the baby.
We were trying to help you keep custody. We said that we would adopt you. You could even live here and go to college. We would help you with the baby. Elizabeth, do you have like a personality or something?
No, you do. You keep saying that you want to help me, keep telling my grandfather, and now you're like going, and then you try to lie about Craig Cherry, saying I just made that up, and I heard you talk about it when everything was your plan. And I did everything you told me to do, and I trusted you because you were so confident.
Elizabeth, I never told you to go to San Antonio.
No, you didn't.
We never told you anything.
I did that on my own, but you were happy that I went there.
We were happy you went there. Are you kidding
because
me?
You had friends there.
I don't have friends there. Jack knew somebody. He knew somebody that could safely get you and this baby back here to go to court.
No, you never said that. That's not how it happened.
Elizabeth, if we set you up with the couple, then why can't you remember their name if we set you up? Why can't you, if we set you up with a couple,
Names
then how
were
come
never
you don't have their name and phone numbers?
Names and numbers weren't exchanged.
Then how did we set you up with
It
a
was
couple?
for you.
How did I do that? I didn't know where you were.
Yes, you
San
did. You know
Antonio's
exactly
huge.
where I was.
How did we know exactly where you were?
I told you.
Huh?
I told you.
You didn't tell us where you were. You were in San Antonio. San Antonio's huge. It's like saying, okay, you're here in Phoenix, Arizona. We don't know where in Phoenix, Arizona. You could be anywhere. You know? Elizabeth, we have got to find that baby. And the only way to find that baby is for you to start talking. And you're not telling the truth. Lies won't get you anywhere.
No, you're not.
There are absolutely, they have already gone through all of our computers, and just so you know, we will be suing you. We will be suing you.
For what?
So no, for
me
what?
for what? What did I do to you?
Destroying our lives. For
You ruined
destroying
my
our
life.
lives with your lies and
No,
by
I didn't
keeping
tell
your
you
mouth
any
shut.
lies.
Well,
You
we had
ruined my life from the very
slander.
beginning. I trusted you and believed you, and you're totally not the person that you said you were.
Elizabeth, you have destroyed our lives by
What have I
taking
done?
that-
I've been in jail. I haven't destroyed your life at all.
by doing what you have done
I
and
haven't
lying
done
to the
anything.
police
You
and
controlled
saying that
every
we
little
helped
thing and
you.
told me to do every little thing, and I did it, and I trusted you. And you said,
We
all
didn't
I was
tell
guilty
you
of, the only thing I
everything
would
we
be
told
guilty
you
of
to
was
do, you
premeditation.
wouldn't do. How many times did I beg you to come back here? How many? How many times did I beg you to come back here?
A few times, but that was, do you have
More than a few.
just
More
plans?
than a
You were
few.
so excited.
We
and
gave
wanted-
you so many incentives to come back here. We begged you. I
gave
had
me incentives
I
no
had you
matter
talk to
what.
my attorney. I had you talk to Janet Morris. I had them try to beg you to come back here. We offered to pay for an attorney for you when you got back here so you could have custody. We offered to help you by bringing the baby to Logan on his visits. You know? What more could we have done to try to get you back here?
That's not sure you wanted me to do everything to get the baby.
Everything to get the baby. How are we going to get the baby if you're out there? How does that get us the baby? Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah,
baby.
by all the plans that you came up with and that we did.
What are those plans? Tell me what those plans were that we came up with.
In San Antonio, when we were talking every single day,
Yeah, what were the plans?
you know what the plans were.
No, I don't. I'd love to hear them, though. I'd love to hear those plans. Can you think up of any?
Yes, I can, and I've already gone over them with you.
No, because I don't know what plans
What
you're
about
talking
going
about.
to Nashville? What about-
Besides the one plan, the one idea that we had
You
of...
told me to go to a shelter and pretend like I was being beat.
No, I told you instead of running and hiding and changing your
You told me to lie
identity,
and
go
tell people I was being
to
beat.
a shelter. Don't just go run and hide your identity. Let somebody help you. That's not trying to get the baby. That's let somebody help you. Don't go hiding your identities and cutting and changing your hair like you said. No, we were trying to localize you, trying to find out where exactly you were, trying to get you
By getting me
to a
to do
place.
illegal things and lie about the truth?
What?
By getting me to do illegal things and lie about the truth?
What is illegal? What was
Everything you
illegal
told
we
me to
tried
do
to get
from
you
the
to
very
do?
beginning was illegal. Lying about the paternity of the fatherhood, putting your cousin's name and number.
Okay, that wasn't, in my mind, that wasn't anything illegal. That was me helping you fill out your paperwork, and you didn't want to put the other guy's name down because it's the guy that you guys went to high school with, and Logan's friend, and me trying to help you and Logan not to start World War III because of the guy's name, and you didn't want to give his name. Still to this day, you haven't given his name.
There is no other guy name to give.
Well, then why did you lie to me and tell me there was?
I didn't. You told me to put 3 or 4 names down, and I told you I didn't have any names to put down.
This call is stupid and useless, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
I don't know why you can't just say where the baby is.
Because I don't know who Gabriel is.
Why would you give the baby to somebody and not even remember their names? You
Because the
remember
names
mine,
weren't
Jack's, and
discussed.
Hannah's.
The names weren't discussed. The names weren't the plan.
So So when you called these people, you said on the third day you gave them the baby. So when you called them, what did you just say? Did you call them and say?
I never called
hey,
them. You called them. It was all set up through you. I did everything you told me to do.
You are a liar. A liar.
No, you are.
Either that or you're
I've seen your
psychotic.
interviews and everything you've been saying and doing and throwing people under the bus, and you've thrown me under the bus.
Elizabeth, you belong under the bus. You gave your baby away, and you're not telling anyone.
To you.
You gave him away to us, and you told us you didn't know where the father was, and then next.
I never said that at all.
Yes, you did, and then you wouldn't tell the police where the baby was for 8 hours, and then we
told your place.
Yeah, but you didn't tell the police that. You kept lying to the police.
They didn't
but this is the thing. Now the baby is with another couple. You gave him away to this couple. You didn't even ask them their names. That's ridiculous. So what is everybody to believe? I mean, you said you killed him. You said you killed the baby. So you know what America believes is that you killed the baby.
Yeah, and I bet you're loving that, huh?
We're
that makes
loving
you
that?
look so innocent.
Wait, what'd you say?
Because that makes you look so innocent.
No, I don't really care about that part because we've already been proven innocent.
No, you haven't, because you've lied about every single detail of everything, and you're just worried about yourself. That's all you're worried about right now.
Nope, absolutely not. We've told the truth since day one. We told them about Tennessee. We told them about his friend in San Antonio. We told them everything about... Huh?
That's not what I heard.
Well, you're not hearing the right areas then because you're not talking to the police. You're seeing
You don't
3
know
minutes.
who I'm talking to.
Huh? What'd you say? Who else are you talking to? I don't know. Are you watching the TV?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, what you're seeing on TV is us talking for an hour and then hearing 30 seconds of an hour conversation. And they only put on TV what is going to sell. They only want to put on there what's going to sound good and what's going to give them ratings. So the police came to us and told us, you are telling them that we set you up with this couple. And you know darn well we never set you up with no couple.
Yeah, okay.
And if you don't come up with this couple, we are going to nail you to the wall because we have 100% proof since day one that we've been telling the police everything we've told them, that we thought for a minute you could change jurisdictions, and if that were the case, we were going to help you with a place to stay in Nashville. But by 24 hours later, we researched it, we called a bunch of attorneys or emailed attorneys, and we found out that that was not the case, that you could not change jurisdictions. And so the next thing we did is we started Googling, can you adopt an adult? We made phone calls on that. And then we sent you text messages saying, call my attorney, call Janet Moore. She will tell you to come back, She will tell you to come back here because you have to come back here. And we have all of that. They have all of our computers and all of our phones, and they see that everything we've told them since day one is all completely true by everything that we Googled in our computer.
I guess that's what they'll see then, if that's what you're so confident that they'll see.
Oh, they already have.
Okay.
They already have. If I was going to be in trouble, they would have arrested me by Friday. It's already Friday of a week later. Trust me, I would be in trouble. And the police would not be calling me being sweet and kind now, asking me questions about your grandmother helping you with all this. Your grandfather also, they're now saying, your grandfather's the one who gave you a car. So, they're like, okay, well, all of a sudden, Grandpa's going to give her a car to drive all the way out there?
What are you talking about? Why are you talking about this?
Huh?
You're a nut.
Elizabeth, who's in jail? Who's in jail? Who gave their baby away?
Yeah,
and now, who's the nut?
Yeah, I know exactly how I'm being portrayed.
You know what? You are a nut. You won't tell people where your child is. Well, he's not your child anymore, but still, you're not telling them where Gabriel is. That is wrong.
Okay, whose child is he then?
He's Logan's. That is Logan's baby. And you've lied about Logan. Logan took care of you. I saw pictures of him. I saw pictures with the baby.
So?
You lied to us the whole time.
I didn't lie to you about anything, Tammy.
You said you told us all kinds of lies
What did I
about
tell you
Logan,
that was
and
a
those were
lie?
lies.
What did I tell you that was a lie? Name one.
Okay, you said that he had nothing to do with his child and he didn't want the child.
I didn't say it had nothing to do. He came and goes as he went, and he didn't help out, and he didn't help out financially.
Well, supposedly, he paid all of the bills the entire time.
With what? He wasn't working.
I don't know, but that's what
exactly.
they're saying.
You don't know what you're talking about.
That's what the police are saying, that they have proof that he did everything for that baby.
No, that darn right, that's not the proof.
No, I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know, because the police are telling me all these things.
I can't even listen to you anymore and go on and on.
I want you to find something. Find the baby. If you do, you're going to get a whole lot less years. You know? You'll get a whole lot less years.
So who are these people calling you from out of country? Who are these friends?
People calling me out of the country?
Yeah, you told me about them when you came to visit me.
You mean talking about the case?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
You named 3 countries of friends that were calling you about the case.
Well, no, more like emails. That it's becoming worldwide, that people that are actually emailing me in 3 separate countries. Let's see, Japan, Singapore, and Africa. Is that what you're talking about?
Was it Nigeria?
No, I said Africa. I don't know which part of Africa. Why?
I don't know. I just think it's funny that you mentioned that to me.
No, it's just a matter of telling you they're going to find the baby soon. I mean, people out of the country are already hearing this story. You know? So I just wish you would tell the truth, because I know that you know more about these people than you're saying you do. And if you really don't, and you're just making things up, they do have, they're putting out dogs that sniff out people, and if you did kill him like you said you did, then they're going to try you because you were in San Antonio, and I don't know if you know much about Texas, but the Texas, if it comes out that you killed this baby in Texas, they will give you, I think it's by lethal injection. So it's not going to be like jail. It's going to be, you're going to go to jail until you have your lethal injection.
I'm aware of all of that.
Huh?
Yes, I'm aware of all of that.
Yeah. So why don't you want to find this baby? You'd rather just die of lethal injection?
I do.
So think, Elizabeth, think. What did the park look like? What did the person look like? Think of these things. You've got to know something. You've got to know something.
I just need them to return Gabriel to a church.
You asked them to return him to a church? Huh?
That's what I need.
You need them to return him to a church or something?
Mm-hmm.
Right. But how do we know how to reach these people if you don't even know where they live? If you don't know anything about them, you don't even know what kind of car they drive.
Yeah, you obviously don't care that I'm going to prison and everything that's being said about me. You just don't care at all.
No, I care about
yourself. That's all you care about.
That's
all I cared about is getting Gabriel, and you don't care who gets screwed over. You screwed over Logan first. Now you screwed over me.
Oh, wait, are you understanding me? I'm never getting Gabriel. He's going to his daddy.
It's funny that you come to that realization now. It's funny you're saying that now. You never said that once before.
Because you said me lies about
you talked to Logan yourself, so you know darn right that's not the case. And he agreed with you about the adoption yourself.
I think he was playing me because he needed to know where you were. And we were playing you while you were gone to get you to get back here. Because we wanted that baby safe. And like I told you before, that baby is not safe being hidden and changing identities. I told you before, how are you ever going to get him to a hospital if you're changing identities and you're on the run and he gets sick or pneumonia? How are you going to take that baby to a hospital and get help for him? You couldn't. And another thing that's being said is, did he accidentally die? Did you accidentally overdose him with Tylenol? There's a babysitter that you had.
Yeah, and everyone knows she's full of crap.
Okay, and I think that I will tell you this, and I keep telling everybody, I don't believe Elizabeth was a hooker. I'm telling everybody that. No, she was not no hooker. And I don't believe she wore stilettos and got dressed up all hot and sexy and left for a couple hours and came back. And, you know, I don't believe all that. Trust me, there's a lot I take up for you for. All I do is tell the truth. That's all I do.
No.
You know, if it's something about you, the truth, we have told people over and over again, we do not believe that you could ever kill that baby. And still right now, I don't believe that you could have done that.
Yeah, because you know I didn't.
Well, I don't know you didn't, but I pray to God you didn't. You know, and in my heart, I'm thinking that you didn't. Can you think of anything about these people, anything that could help find them? Did they mention anything? Did you really give them the baby? Huh?
Cut the crap. Just
cut the crap?
Yes.
What do you mean cut the crap?
You know what I mean.
No, I don't know what you mean. Elizabeth, trying to act like we had something to do with this is not going to help you.
You did, and you know you did.
You know we did. You know we had something to do with this.
Yes,
why do you think we had something to do with this?
Because you did.
Connect the dots for me, please. Enlighten me. Because there are no dots that connect us there. Just because Jack knows a friend that he hasn't seen in years that lives out there? That's crazy.
Friends, not one person.
Not
one person that you can happen to account for.
Not one person, what, that we can account for? If there was somebody that we helped you with, then you would know who it was. You know? If we helped you with somebody, then why don't you know who it was? And why are you saying that you met these people in a park?
I don't know who they are. You're
Oh, I know them, and do you have any idea how crazy that sounds? That we know who these people are, but you don't?
No, that doesn't sound crazy at all. It's exactly how it is and how it happened.
That's very crazy. That sounds very, very crazy. Elizabeth, we need your help in finding this baby. This baby needs to come home safely to his daddy. And this is not fair what you are doing to
You're the one
Logan.
doing it. You did it. I didn't do it.
What the hell did I do? You tell me what I did, Elizabeth.
You did
what
everything.
Did I do?
Everything in Arizona, everything in San Antonio, everything you've done. Everything continuing.
We've done
You
all
just
this.
don't stop.
You're crazy. You're absolutely as crazy as they say you are.
Okay. And you know what they say about you, too.
You know what? It doesn't matter what they're saying about us. Our innocence has already been proven. It's already been proven.
Just because you're not in jail doesn't mean your innocence has been proven.
What?
Just because you're in jail, just because you're not in jail and I am, that doesn't mean that your innocence has been proven. So you may think that just because you haven't been arrested.
It's been proven because everything that we've said from the beginning matches every dot that they pulled out of our phone and everything that we've pulled out of emails. Us emailing people trying to find out, can you change jurisdictions? And when we found out the answer was no, we immediately went to emails and things about, can you adopt an adult? You know, and they know that. We've said it from the beginning. They just never came and got our computers until a week ago. They never got that information yet. Now that they do, now they're going into a different direction. So they're finding the laptop that you sold. They're going to get that laptop back. Go through that. They're going through every computer that you could have used, in every library. They're going through every single, and they can get all that information, So this family, when they find this family, they're going to go to jail for kidnapping. But what if, just imagine this, okay? Imagine this scenario, Elizabeth. What if these people get found, or they're scared that they're going to get found, and what if they decide, you know what? Let's kill Gabriel the way Elizabeth said she killed him. Let's put him in a bag and suffocate him, put him in a diaper bag and throw him in a dumpster. Nobody will ever know that it will be us. They'll find the baby dead, and they'll think Elizabeth did what she said she did. Now you go and you get lethal injection in Texas. What if they do that? If I were you, I would think really, really hard about where that baby is and who you gave that baby to, because I'm going to tell you, if those people are scared enough that they think that they're going to go to prison, because they will. They'll go for at least 10 years or longer, I'm sure. And they're going to be so scared, they may decide to go ahead and kill him the way you said that you did, because then they're out of it, and everybody's looking at, oh my gosh, she did kill the baby. And then nobody's going to be looking for a family anymore. They're just going to think that, oh, Elizabeth did it. And then Elizabeth's got to spend maybe 10 years in jail until they're ready to put you down by lethal injection. And I can guarantee you, a baby murderer, you're going to be murdered, or you're going to be beat up and raped constantly, because they're going to put you in general population. You're not able to be around the ugly people like that right now. But guess what? If they find that baby dead, you will be. You will be.
I don't know, Skinner.
Yeah, at the time I'd like to call Patricia Ramirez. Detective, that call I did pretty abruptly. What happened?
At the end of that conversation, well, actually, Elizabeth Johnson, she ended that phone call. I was right next to her as the phone call was being made. Her hand was extremely shaky. She had the phone, and she pretty much said she didn't want to hear that. Her hand was shaking, and then she disconnected the line.
Now, did any information obtained in this call lead you to any further information that would help with the whereabouts of Gabriel?
No.
Did this phone call help you at all establish what the dynamic was between these two people?
Yes.
And what did you observe regarding the dynamic?
So I definitely heard Tammi Smith in control during that phone call. Elizabeth Johnson appeared quiet at times, and I was able to see the dynamics between the two, which is very useful during the confrontational phone call.
Did you talk to the defendant at all about this phone call after this occurred?
Yes.
What were the circumstances that led you to talk to her?
I had remained at the jail for a little bit after that confrontational phone call, and then when I returned back to the station, I had a voice message left from Tammi Smith in reference to her receiving this phone call.
So then Tammi called you and told you that this phone call had occurred?
Yes. And then roughly about 4 p.m. that same day, I returned her phone call.
And when you returned her phone call, did you talk to the defendant about the phone call?
Yes.
Did the defendant tell you about what happened during the phone call?
Yes.
And based on what she told you, was she fairly consistent with what happened with the phone call?
She was.
And did she indicate to you one way or another whether or not she thought it was recorded?
She did. She thought it was recorded.
At the beginning of the phone call, we heard a recording about voting. You know what that was about?
That was the Maricopa County, the recording on the jail line is what I heard.
So that recording went through in this phone call?
Yes.
When you talked to the defendant about the phone call, did you have further conversation with her about some of the subjects you'd already talked to her about, for instance, Tennessee?
Yes.
And did she reiterate some information that she'd previously provided you about the rental house and stepson's condo?
She did.
Did you talk at all again about the renewal house in Tennessee?
Yes.
And what essentially, did she tell you anything new about that?
No.
Did you talk again about Craig Cherry?
Yes.
What did she tell you about Craig Cherry on this occasion?
She spoke again about having consumed alcohol the day prior to her going to the courthouse. She also stated that Elizabeth Johnson wanted her to use Craig Cherry's name because initially she had wanted Jack's name on that paperwork.
Did she talk to you at all about the time frame that she had indicated she researched changing jurisdictions?
She did. Initially, she had said that this was during a 24-hour period, and then during this phone call, she said it possibly might have gone past that 24 hours. She reflected back to the Christmas Eve weekend that she may have looked up changing jurisdictions during that time frame.
And did she in fact say to you that it could have been a couple of days?
Yes.
Going back to the confrontation call, we looked at your notes, the notes that you had provided to Elizabeth Johnson. We looked at those yesterday. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that were discussed in this confrontation call. Did you suggest to Elizabeth Johnson to say to the defendant, you called up all your friends?
Objection, lady.
Sustained.
In the recording, Elizabeth Johnson says to Tammi Smith, you called up all your friends. Did you tell Elizabeth to say that?
No.
In the recording, Elizabeth tells the defendant, they should be looking at your phone records. Did you tell Elizabeth to say that?
Objection, lady.
Overruled.
No.
In the recording, Elizabeth says to the defendant, you were happy I went to San Antonio. Did you tell Elizabeth to say that?
No.
In the recording, Elizabeth says to the defendant, you know exactly where I was at because I told you. Did you tell Elizabeth to say that?
No.
In the recording, Elizabeth tells the defendant, you told me to go to a shelter and pretend like I was being beat. Did you tell Elizabeth to say that?
I did not.
In the recording, the defendant says to Elizabeth, you told us you didn't know where the father was, and Elizabeth says in response, I never said that at all. Did you tell Elizabeth to say that?
No, I did not.
In this recording, Elizabeth comments about some people out of country that Tammi Smith had talked about. At the time this call happened, did you know what that was about?
No, I did not.
Did you tell Elizabeth to talk about people calling from out of country?
No, I did not.
In this phone call, Elizabeth says, that's all you cared about is getting Gabriel, and you know you don't care who gets screwed over. It's just you screwed over Logan first, now you screwed over me. Did you tell Elizabeth to say that?
No, I did not.
In response to the defendant saying in this phone call, he's going to his daddy and I'm 100% for that. It's not fair what you're doing to Logan. Elizabeth stated, it's funny that you came to that realization. It's funny you're saying that now. You never said that before. Did you tell Elizabeth to say that?
No.
In this phone call, the defendant says to Elizabeth, we've told the truth since day one. Based on the interviews that you got, did the defendant provide you all of the information that she told Elizabeth in this phone call since day one?
No.
In this phone call, the defendant tells Elizabeth, we told them, and I believe she's referring to the police, about Tennessee, and we told them about his friend in San Antonio since day one. Did the defendant actually tell you about Jack's friend in San Antonio since day one?
No.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to object at this point, Your Honor. We're now going through every question that was discussed on the confrontation call. The jury's heard the call itself. What is the purpose?
I sustain as the cumulative nature of what we're going through. I give you a certain amount of leeway regarding whether the detective suggested any questions, but we're beyond that. We're now just simply reiterating what was said, so the objection sustained.
Thank you.
Well, Your Honor, I'm actually asking the detective a question about what was said, obtaining additional information.
The only additional information you're eliciting is whether she suggested it. You're simply repeating it.
That's not what I asked Your Honor. What I asked her is the defendant stated that they told the police on day one about the friend in San Antonio, and I'm asking the detective if that in fact is the case.
That portion is correct. You prefaced that with about 10 to 15 questions that were doing what I took the objection to be relating to the extent that you're asking whether that was actually reported to you, something that Ms. Smith said, you can ask that question.
Detective.
So let's hear the question. Let me see if there's an objection. But I agree with you that the form of that question is appropriate.
Did the defendant tell you since day one about Jack's friend in San Antonio?
No.
When was the first time you heard about Jack's friend in San Antonio?
I recall that on the interview of December 31st of 2009.
And in this call, there was comment about the police calling the defendant sweet and kind, asking about Elizabeth's grandparents. Were you calling the defendant sweet and kind and asking about Elizabeth's grandparents?
No.
In this conversation, the defendant says a few times that the baby's going to go back to Logan, and this is Logan's baby. Based on your investigation from prior to this date and then after this date, is that the same indication the defendant was giving throughout the case that the baby would go back to Logan?
No.
What information did you have that that was not what the defendant intended, was for the baby to go back to Logan?
Well, starting from the very first interview, which was December 29th of 2009, Tammi Smith spoke poorly of Logan and his parenting and stated that she did not believe that there would be any court that would turn over custody to Logan. So that started from the very beginning.
Okay, Detective, we're going to go ahead and move on now to the next day. January 23rd, 2010. What did you do on that date?
On the 23rd, I received a request from the FBI, and they requested further information on Robert Johnson's vehicle, the condition, the exterior, and the interior of his vehicle. I then called Robert Johnson, Sr., although I wasn't able to reach him. I left him a voice message on that date.
And what was the reason why you needed to contact Robert Johnson about his vehicle?
Well, San Antonio and the FBI, they were doing further investigation in reference to the whereabouts of Gabriel Johnson. So they were trying to figure out if she was at, for example, a car wash, the condition where she might have, trying to backtrack where she might have gone in hopes of finding Gabriel's location.
And Detective, what did you do on January 25th, 2010 in regard to this investigation?
I was able to reach Robert Johnson Sr. and discuss with him what the FBI was requesting, reference his vehicle.
And what else did you do that day?
If I may reflect back. On January 25th of 2010, Logan McQueary, he came to the Tempe police station where I was at, and he arrived with a recorder in order to provide me with the conversation, the recorded conversation from December 28th of 2009. That's when Tammi Smith phoned him after the court hearing. So he wanted to turn that over to our custody. I then spoke with him in an interview room. I had him play that recorder. I transferred it, and then I walked him through a timeline as to when he first spoke to Tammi Smith, and he provided me that information.
And on that same day, did you obtain any information from detectives regarding phone calls?
On that day, I received information from, if I may go back.
If it refreshes your memory.
Thank you. I don't have that. I have that from the 25th. I have that from the 28th in terms of a message from Detective Thompson.
I'm asking specifically about Detective Harris and Detective Campbell. Did you get some information regarding phone calls from them?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Overruled.
I need to go back to apologize. I'm not seeing that in my report, though I have two different reports here.
Well, let me ask this, Detective. At some point in time, were you provided information about the phone calls in this case?
Yes.
And January 27, 2010, what did you do on that day?
Ron Olive from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, he was the representative from Team Adam. He had telephoned me, and he was now in San Antonio, and they were requesting further information on this suitcase that Elizabeth Johnson may have traveled with. And that was because San Antonio was preparing to do a landfill check.
And in this case, was a landfill check ever done?
Yes.
And was there any information or evidence that led to Gabriel?
No.
On January 28, 2010, what did you do in this case?
On January 28th, I was able to actually reach Robert Johnson Sr., reference the luggage, as well as Logan McQueary. They both described the luggage pieces.
We haven't quite gotten into what would be a hearsay statement. It's not a truth of the matter asserted yet. Let's stay off of what they said for safety's sake. Don't testify as to what anybody told you.
So you talked to them about the suitcase?
Yes, I did.
And then what else did you do on just January 28, 2010?
I had contact with Detective Galbraith. She had informed me that she had received...
Sustained.
Without telling us what Detective Galbraith told you, did you obtain some information?
Yes.
And what was that in regard to?
In regards to a report that was completed from Alan Kreidel from DPS.
So is this the first date you had Alan Kreidel's results?
Yes.
January 28, 2010?
Yes.
And did you receive some information forwarded from Detective Thompson?
I did.
And what was that?
That was voice messages left from Tammi Smith prior to my interview on January 14th of 2010.
I think we're kind of at a natural breaking point, so let's take our lunch break. We're going to take our lunch break until approximately 1:30. So until then, remember the admonition, and we'll see you in about an hour and a half.
All rise.
Okay, please be seated, everyone. We're outside the presence of the jury. We can step down. Anything that we need to talk about from the state's perspective?
Not from the state, Your Honor.
From the defense perspective?
Your Honor, one of the things I neglected to bring up earlier when we talked about scheduling is we have prepared a written Rule 20 motion. I assume the court's going to want to allow some time for argument at the end of the state's case. Hopefully that'll be today.
I will. What I may do, depending on when the state ends, I may ask you to transition into the defense case, understanding that you're not waiving the right to move under Rule 20, and then we'll take it up. It depends. I'm not sure. Again, if we're half hour into a time period like after lunch or after the afternoon break, I'm not sure I want to stop and then spend the time to argue the Rule 20 at that point. So I may ask you to present the witness, understanding that I'll consider the Rule 20 at the next break after that. But let me see when we get to that point.
I understand, Your Honor, and we would object to that procedure. We would like to urge our motion at the end of the state's case.
And to me, that I'm giving you that opportunity because I make you start the case doesn't mean that I'm rejecting it or otherwise doing anything other than considering it as I would whenever you would make the motion, as long as it was raised in a timely manner. So we'll see where we're at. Let me tell you, I have a concern, and there's not an objection to it, but continuing to hear Elizabeth Johnson make accusations as it relates to the San Antonio situation as far as giving the baby. I understand the state's not making that argument, but the more that we get into it, bleeding over into what I understand to be the relevant topics of questions about what the defendant may have have said regarding Mr. Cherry or statements that she may have made to Elizabeth Johnson regarding Tennessee has got me concerned, because we just spent 10 or 15 minutes listening to Ms. Johnson accuse Ms. Smith of aiding in the baby actually disappearing in San Antonio. The state's not making that argument. The jury, I think we have to at least instruct the jury as to that, but I don't like it coming up again. And I thought when I listened to it that portion could have easily been excised out of the confrontation call, and we could get into the specifics that I think were relevant. But I don't like this continual reference to Elizabeth Johnson alleging that the defendant had something to do with the disappearance when the state's not taking that position. But after a while, the jury's hearing it so much, it almost feels like the state's suggesting that Ms. Smith had something to do with it, and that's not what this case is about. So I'm concerned about that, and I want to limit that. I don't know if we're going to get any, I don't sense we're going to get into that anymore. If I had it to do all over again, I would have wanted to limit any references to allegations that she had anything to do with the disappearance in San Antonio, because the state's not saying she did, and that's not what this case is about.
And, Your Honor, that was our concern originally in regard to the free talk, and that's what I discussed with Mr. Lee. The night in between him indicating he wanted to play it and then us actually playing the free talk agreement was my concern. But I also think Mr. Lee had a good argument that the free talk and the confrontation call both deal with Elizabeth Johnson's credibility as well as the defendant's credibility. And so it's difficult to deal with the issues without that also coming out too. So I don't know that we did talk about it. Mr. Lee and I talked about it together, and I don't know that we had a better suggestion on how to deal with it. He wanted to present the free talk because of Elizabeth Johnson's credibility. He felt he had a right to attack her credibility. I don't disagree with that. But at the same realm, we wanted to play the confrontation call because we feel it dealt with some of the allegations that the defendant has specifically done in this case, that we have evidence to support that this is just the co-conspirator confronting her on those. But it does lay out this whole other issue that we really didn't know how to deal with.
But there's a difference between them choosing to bring that up to attack Elizabeth Johnson's credibility in the context of the free talk, and then you playing the whole thing now and bringing it out. If they chose to bring it out in cross-examination, so be it. I have less of a concern because that's their choice. Now, I understand they didn't object to Exhibit 207, but what I'm saying is I've got a concern as I'm managing the trial about watching or listening to all these statements being made, accusations by Elizabeth Johnson that are not part of the state's case, and they are potentially prejudicial to the defendant. I didn't think in the context of Exhibit 207 we needed to hear that. We could have heard the issues that the state believes are important in isolation, and we could have moved right to that and gotten beyond, I think, at least to a large degree, the discussion about what happened in San Antonio. But that's already been done. I just want to let you know that I'm getting to the point where I want you both to talk to me about it before it comes out, if it's going to come out again, so we can make sure we're all on the same page with respect to any information coming out where there's reports of accusations that Elizabeth Johnson made with respect to what happened in San Antonio. Now, I'm expecting that may come out in cross-examination if you want to confirm with the detective what the position is with respect to the state's position or the detective's belief with respect to what happened in San Antonio. But I guess I'm telling the state, I want a heads up if there's any more affirmative presentation regarding someone's allegations that Ms. Smith had something to do with the baby's disappearance in San Antonio. Okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Then I will see you at 1:30. Everyone, please be seated. Let the record reflect the presence of the jury panel, Ms. Smith and counsel. Welcome back, everyone. We're back and ready to go. I think we left off with Detective Ramirez here testifying. So, Detective, come on back up. Ms. Andrews, you may proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon.
I think we were now on to January 29th, 2010. Would you tell us what you did on that day?
I conducted a telephonic interview with Deanne and Sam Ayala on that day.
And is there anything else you did on that particular day?
No.
And then I believe the next time I have noted that you worked on this case or anything relevant particular to this case was February 2nd, 2010. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm going to step back real quick before we move to February 2nd, 2010. We previously talked about an interview on December 31st, 2009. Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Detective, I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 231. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
That's the interview from December 31st of 2009.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of exhibit number 231.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 231 is admitted.
And we are not publishing this at this time. Detective, why don't you tell us what happened on February 2nd, 2010?
On that day, Tammi Smith was arrested for 2 charges. One was forgery and conspiracy to commit custodial interference.
Did you interview the defendant on that day?
I did.
And where did that interview take place?
At the Tempe Police Station located at 120 East 5th Street.
And was that interview audio and video recorded?
Yes.
And does the video on this one work?
Yes.
Detective, I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit 208. It's an envelope. You recognize that envelope?
Yes.
And is the exhibit in the laptop?
Yes.
And did you look at the exhibit there in the laptop today?
Yes.
And what's on the exhibit that's in the laptop?
It's the interview with Tammi Smith from February 2nd, 2010.
Your Honor, at this time I move for the admission and publishing of this exhibit pursuant to the conversation that we had prior.
Any objection? Exhibit 208 is in. Just to let you know, and I'm not sure how it's going to come through, sometimes we have exhibits that we have to edit out portions for legal reasons. This may be one of them, so there may be some choppiness here and there as we go through. I'm not absolutely sure, but you may publish exhibit 208. And 208 is admitted, and you may publish it.
And for the record, Your Honor, it's approximately 28 minutes.
Okay.
All right, Tammi, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to the presence of an attorney to assist you prior to questioning if you so desire. And if you cannot afford an attorney, you have the right to have an attorney appointed for you prior to questioning. Do you understand your rights?
Yes.
Okay. Will you voluntarily answer my questions?
I will, depending on what questions they are, and if I feel like my attorney needs to be here, then
Okay,
I will answer the ones that I feel my attorney may not want me to answer.
Okay, that's fair, because you can stop at any point. So the way I'm understanding is that you'll voluntarily start the interview, and if you want to stop and so forth, then we need to do that. Then we will do that, okay? I haven't spoken to you in about a week. Do you have anything new or anything that you want to talk to me about?
It's just things that I've heard, but
Okay.
I think I'd rather my attorney explain the things that we've heard so that he knows how to explain them correctly.
Okay.
As he feels that anything I say that you guys try to create something, different from what I'm saying, because you guys obviously think that I know something more, which I don't.
Well, maybe this will help. I'm going to explain your charges, okay? So maybe this will help kind of clarify some things for you. You're under arrest for conspiracy and conspiracy of custodial interference, okay? That's going to be one charge here, and then you're also under arrest for forgery in reference to the court document from the petition for paternity for Judge McVeigh, okay? No secrets here. The way I've always worked with you is for me to be very clear, straightforward up front, okay? And so what happened, why, this all started December 27th in a sense. Here we are, February 2nd, is that I take the steps very slowly, making sure we don't have any mistakes. It's not a matter of, what do we create, perceive, so forth. I'm pretty much a fact finder. It comes down to, okay, do we have any evidence to support a crime? If we have evidence to support a crime, then that's where the charge comes, and then this is turned over to the county attorney's office.
Right.
Okay. And so basically, those are, I don't think that there's a surprise there.
Correct.
And that's pretty much where we're at.
Okay. Now you said there were 3 charges. What's the third?
Well, the conspiracy and custodial interference, it's basically conspiracy to commit custodial interference. Technically, on the ARS book, on our law book, it comes as one charge, two charge, but it's basically like a combination of one charge, okay? It's going to go on paper. When I do your booking later, it'll have 3 slots for it, but for the most part, it's almost easier to see that it's conspiracy to commit custodial interference, and then it's a forgery.
Right.
Okay. And probably your attorney can help figure that out, but it's nothing, there's no kidnapping, there's nothing in reference to that. The evidence that supports that comes directly from custodial interference and from forgery.
Okay.
So that's not really anything of a trick.
I understand.
What I was going to have you do is, in this interview, is go through the time frame. I think that's the easiest, and that's how I was going to lead this interview, is through the time frame. Let you answer to what ended up happening is I conducted all these interviews with you, conducted interviews with other people, pulled the evidence and so forth. And this is where statements were different, evidence then supported different angles of all of this. For example, we could use your cousin. Started off initially, they made some phone calls, made some statements, even locally, even directly to us. You called, I'll give you an example, Detective Thompson, stating that Elizabeth had used your cousin's name, more like conversation, that she had gathered the name, and used a little, had a little chuckle that just she grabbed it, and then she put it on and you did the same thing with me.
Right.
You wanted to.
And honestly, until I saw your paperwork, until I saw my writing on there, I honestly had completely, because I was pushed from the lady at the front desk. You only have a couple minutes, they're locking the doors. I honestly did not remember until I saw my writing, but when I saw my writing, I came forth and said, wow, that's my writing. Honestly didn't, and I know you think because it had only been a couple weeks that I should have remembered, but, when you're talking about so, many hours of something that has gone by, days and days that's gone by, it's really hard to remember insignificant things and what you did or said that really didn't pertain to what I felt was important to the case. That I didn't even realize at one point, when we were first talking at our house, had no clue that you even thought that we had anything. We were flabbergasted at the fact that you guys would think we had anything to do with anything wrong. Because in our minds, and still today in our minds, we've done everything humanly possible to help her to do the right thing legally, and, when I did that, my attorney can explain it to you, but it's,
Sure.
it wasn't something that I thought I was doing wrong at the moment.
Okay. There's another angle that in terms of a witness, in terms of calling a friend to even ask, specifically another person, hey, can I use your husband's name on some paternity paperwork? So I hear what you're saying, but it's not as simple as just that. I mean, if we're going to be fair here and lay it out, and what I've said to you is I do believe that you come clean with things. There is some understanding that we are all human and we can all make mistakes. Okay, but it wasn't just that, and you can forget things, that I do understand. Okay, but it didn't just stop with just that paperwork. I mean, I have someone who has come forward. That then requires me to do some hunt work on that. I can't take things on just face value, okay?
Right.
People could not like you for whatever reason, and that just isn't enough to just go on face value, correct? So have to do some hunt work, figure that out. That takes some time and so forth. So can you explain that?
I know I have no idea what you would be talking about. Actually.
No. What I'm saying is, so in that same day, okay, you're driving. I understand the pressure, the court, all of that. But when you call a friend on the way to the court...
I called a friend on the way to the court?
Well, what I'm saying is you called another friend to ask to use... Did you call Deanne and ask her to use her husband's name?
On the way to court? No.
Well, that may be... Okay.
The night before when I was drinking and I completely forgot about it until you had mentioned that, and I had to really think hard about it until you mentioned it to me. But I had too much wine to drink I didn't even remember the next day when I did go to court with Elizabeth, or the courthouse or whatever. Didn't even remember until she brought it up to me at that moment, and I was like, oh my God, you're really going to use his name. So.
Okay. Have you talked with your cousin in reference to all of this? I mean, I know he's never met Elizabeth, but did you have any conversation with him in terms of explaining how his name ended up on the court petition?
I know I talked to him. I can't remember what I said to him about it.
So you don't remember having a conversation in reference to his name, or whether you apologized,
I remember definitely apologizing, but I don't remember exactly what our conversation was about. I think it was pretty short.
Okay. When did you have that conversation with him?
I don't remember.
Was it within this month? Was it?
Probably, yeah. I'm guessing.
Okay. And I'm not here to trick you. I'm just asking you questions that I believe that in terms of a truthful answer will assist in all of this, okay? I'm not here to trick you. Okay, they're very direct. I've been very direct with you from the very beginning.
I just think that I should probably not even talk, though, because my attorney told me not to, and he's going to wind up getting mad at me for even talking to you, you know? Did he call you?
No, I haven't received a call.
Okay, because he was calling you when they were arresting me is when he was calling.
I was out to lunch. They called me.
Okay.
I rushed back in here, and I haven't even been to my desk. I grabbed my folder, and I came straight here. So no, I haven't had a call. So are you saying that you want to end an interview?
I guess so, because it's better that we do the interview with him, because I don't know I know that he believes that everything's being twisted, and because you guys aren't looking at it in my point of view, you guys are looking at it in a completely different point of view, so he probably needs to help me speak or something, or I don't know.
Okay.
Because, the long and short of it is that, I am completely innocent. And yes, maybe I wrote that down, but in that moment, the night before, I was drinking too much wine. I don't even hardly remember the night before. The next day when she asked me to help her and do that, I thought, and I don't know if I've come right out and said it, because we're trying really hard not to say ugly things about Logan. But by all the facts that she showed me, by all the lies that Logan, and just wondering too, or I don't know if you guys are doing the forgery charge on Logan too, for the lies he put on the paper, because she was answering to his lies basically, on his paper, that she had showed me all the proof, and I guess the judge got kind of mad at him for making up lies on that paperwork, and hers was basically an answer to his paperwork. Did I know that she was filing it through the court like it was a court document? No, it was supposed to be going directly to Logan, according
So when
to her.
you're at the court, now you just way confused me. So when you're at the court, you're helping with the petition of paperwork. It gets stamped. You're actually you're in Phoenix. You're not at home.
Right? No. I understand that. But according to her, this is her answer to Logan. Was I thinking in my mind this goes to a judge? No, this was her answer to Logan. That's why she was upset that he didn't put a real address, and I actually gave her a stamp. I gave her, I believe, 2 stamps to send it to Logan.
Miss Tricia. Sure. Well, I need to step out. Okay. Sure. Be right with you. Hang on just a second.
That you are trying to trick me, and
If I'm understanding you right, that you do not want to. Because I'm not here to trick you, okay? You mentioned that if I'm understanding you right, that you do not want to do an interview without an attorney present. Your attorney present? Would you say that that's
I
true?
probably shouldn't, because I know he's going to wind up getting mad at me, because he knows that you guys are trying to twist it into something different than it is. And I know you're saying that you're not, and I understand that, but I know what the real truth is myself. And so when you guys talk in these ways, it only leads me to believe that you are trying to trick me and make something that's not there, create something that's not there. I don't know what people might have said, but it's pretty sick that people are going to lie. I can tell you right now, Deanna Ayla needs money. She's probably hoping and praying that we know something so she can get her reward money. And if that's, if that's all you got, and as far as I know, that's all you could have. Yes, I know I put Craig Cherry's name on there. I know that now. Before, I honestly did not remember putting his name there. Honestly, swear to God, did not remember it until I saw the paper. I could have lied and said that's not my handwriting, and you guys could have spent lots of money trying to do handwriting analysis, could have came back inconclusive, whatever, but I didn't lie about it. I saw it, and oh my God, that's my handwriting. I didn't think about it because it was so spur of the moment. All of a sudden, I'm there. She's upset that all these lies he said about her on the paperwork, and I'm not thinking in my brain this is going through the court system. That's why I gave her stamps to send it to him, and she was mad that it wasn't a regular address. It was a P.O. box, and how is he going to get it from a P.O. box tomorrow when she's wanting this to be sent out right now? Let's get it to him tomorrow. In my brain, that's all I'm thinking, I wrote this down because Logan, according to her, was going to shoot this guy and shoot her because Logan, she showed me all his things and, showed me the proof that he lied in all of these in his letter. There's at least 2 or 3 lies in there. And if he also put that through the court system, then, it's like, okay, where's his forgery charge? He should have a forgery charge too.
Okay.
Why is he, I don't understand any of this. I don't understand any of it. Why did she fly to Boston for her grandma to help her adopt the baby out? Couldn't do it, so she flew back, and that's when I met her in the airport in Indianapolis. And then grandpa gives her a car out of the blue. Never gave her a car in all the 7 months of that baby's life. She had to scrape, according to her, scrape and do everything all on her own. And now all of a sudden, she wants to put the baby up for adoption. Grandpa and grandma are saying that they want that to happen, but yet nobody is even looking. I'm not expecting anyone to not look at me. You guys can look at me all you want, arrest me, do whatever you want to do. I know my innocence, and God knows my innocence. And to be honest with you, this is wrong because me and my husband did everything in our power to get her to come back here, to go to court, to do everything the legal route. And at one point, yes, we were desperate when she said, I'm never gonna call you again. I'm about to, change mine and his identity. And at that time, we freaked out. Well, give us 24 hours. Let us figure out, can you change jurisdictions? We're gonna find that out for you. We're not gonna do, and we told her point blank, we won't do anything illegal, but if it can be done, we'll help you. We'll help you. We'll get an attorney. We'll help you do this the right way. Found out immediately she couldn't do that. Within, it was Christmas weekend, I believe. It's hard to get a hold of anybody during that whole Christmas weekend. So when we did find out that she could not do that, we had my attorney, Ken Shutt, which is now going to be my witness in this case. He's going to be my key witness. Spoke to him many times, and another attorney of his, which is, I can't remember her name, but Ken knows her name. And she also did the same thing. We were trying to figure out how we could help her come here. How much do we have to pay to help her come here and spend all this money to help her keep custody of the baby? And if we can possibly adopt her and help her. Yes, we wanted to keep Gabriel in our lives. That's why we wanted to adopt her, so that we could be the grandparents, and maybe we would get to see him 4 days a week, and Logan gets him the other part, and we would bring the baby to Logan, we would pick him up, and Elizabeth would never have to deal with him anymore and deal with her PTSD because of Logan. And once this goes to court, we're all going to have to spend tons of money to go to court through all of this. I understand that, and God is on our side, and God will bring us the money. We don't have the money, but guess what? God always has provided for me because I am innocent, and God will provide the money for me to go to court. And I promise you that I will come out innocent. You know, because we have done nothing wrong. We have so much evidence and so many people to prove my innocence in this. I've got 2 attorneys to prove my innocence. I've got Janet Morris to prove my innocence. I've got Joe Hare to prove my innocence. I've got emails and I've got text messages, and you guys can take a little text message and make it look like something, but yet that's not the case. And you know, I don't know if you pray, or I don't know anything about you, but you know, if you did, maybe if you asked God for guidance on this whole case, maybe you would see things a little bit more differently. Maybe you would also look at everything that proves our innocence rather than trying to prove our guiltiness. You know, and that's very sad, because it's going to cause everybody to spend so much money and so much time. And, you know, it's just very sad. You know, we did, in mine and my husband's hearts and minds, we were trying to be heroes here and bring Logan back his child, you know? And we told Logan that. We did everything we could to help Logan. In the beginning, we asked him, wait, what's the deal with this? Are you really wanting the adoption to go through? I mean, what are you wanting? You know, because he was supposed to meet us at the courthouse when they went to court. Elizabeth said she just won full custody of the baby, and they go back to court in March. And he stormed out of there. I had the baby, we had his Christmas pictures, and we were all supposed to go have lunch and talk about the adoption. And from what that looked like, it was like, okay. And she's like, he's just mad because I just won full custody, and he has to wait till March to see the baby. And we're like, well, we're here. Why doesn't he want to see the baby now? You know, I mean, we didn't understand that. Why wouldn't he want to see the baby? If he was trying to fight for him, I didn't understand. And since we found out Elizabeth was in San Antonio, Logan's the one who told us how to find her in San Antonio. So he calls us, and you can see on the phone log, Logan calls us. Immediately, we're on the phone with Logan, we go on MySpace, which Logan had just supposedly sent her a MySpace message to. And you can see on our computer, we had never been on her MySpace page ever before. So how did we even know she had one? And then you can see on there where we're saying, you need to call us immediately. This is very important, you know. And from there on, it goes. There is so much evidence to prove our innocence in all of this. And so we just don't even understand why we're in this position.
Detective, the defendant suggested to you that you look at the information to prove her innocence or in the light favorable to the defendant. Did you do that in this case?
Yes.
Did you have any further contact with the defendant after this interview?
No.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Cross-examination, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Detective Ramirez.
I know you've been on the witness stand for a couple of days now, so let me take you back a little bit to the first day you testified, which I think was Thursday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay. My understanding, Detective, is that the primary goal at all times was to find the baby, correct?
Correct.
And, of course, making sure that he was safe.
Correct.
And one of the things that we've seen that you were very, very busy doing during this investigation was to interview Ms. Smith, correct?
Correct.
And we have heard several of those conversations that you've had with Ms. Smith, correct?
Correct.
And I believe that you testified, again, back on Thursday, I think it was, that you interviewed her approximately 8 times. Is that correct?
Approximately, yes.
Several of those times, Ms. Smith contacted you.
Correct.
And you've testified that you have recorded all of those conversations, correct?
Most of those conversations.
And several of those conversations were over the telephone.
Yes.
We've heard that, obviously. And
You told us back on Thursday that you did not tell Ms. Smith that you were recording those conversations with her, correct?
Correct.
And I believe you said there was possibly one conversation that you had with her that was not recorded.
That's correct.
For sure, correct?
That's correct.
And that was because you were at home and didn't have your recorder on you or something to that effect?
That's correct.
But as far as you know, everything else with Tammy was recorded.
Yes.
And that's because you're very conscientious. We've seen that over the last few days. You want to make sure that everything is recorded. It protects the integrity of your investigation, correct?
Correct.
When you came to the Smith home with the search warrant, you recorded that.
Yes.
And on the other 2 occasions you came to the Smith home, you recorded those visits.
Correct.
And we've heard some of those recordings, but not all of them,
Yes.
correct? Now, Ms. Smith always spoke very, very freely with you, didn't she?
She did.
And many times she I'm so sorry. The microphone's very sensitive. She sometimes initiated that contact with you, didn't she?
That's correct.
She left you several voice messages.
Yes.
She always called you back
Yes.
when you called her first.
Correct.
There was never a time that you felt that she was trying to avoid you.
That's correct.
Now, at some point during the investigation, you obtained her phone records. Or the
Well, I
Tempe
didn't
police.
obtain them. Yes, correct.
I stand correct. The Tempe police obtained her phone records.
Correct.
But it was somebody else in the investigation that got those records, not you.
Yes.
And you reviewed those records.
No, I didn't review them specifically. No.
And her phones were tapped.
Correct.
Correct. And I believe you were the co-author of the affidavit for that warrant, correct?
That's correct.
And but you were the one who ordered it, who wanted to get it, right?
No, I wouldn't say I was the one that wanted to get it. It was a decision made by the Tempe Police Department.
Who made that decision, Detective?
That was during a briefing with command staff and supervisors. I don't recall specifically who ordered that, but that was a group decision during a briefing.
Okay, a group decision to wiretap Ms. Smith's phones.
That's correct.
Is that
to
my
start,
understanding?
yes,
Okay.
the search warrant for that.
Okay, so that was not your decision.
No, I wouldn't say that that was specifically my decision.
And the purpose of that wiretap, if my understanding is correct, was to help find Gabriel.
That's correct.
How long were the Smith's phones tapped?
Less than 30 days. I don't have the exact numbers of days.
You also tapped Elizabeth Johnson's grandfather's phone.
That's correct.
Correct, Robert Johnson Sr.
Yes.
You also tapped his phone. For how long was his phone tapped?
It was for the same amount of time.
Do you remember the dates of those wiretaps?
No, I do not.
Did you listen to any of the calls from Mr. Johnson's phone?
No, I did not.
And the dates of those wiretaps?
I do not know the specific dates on that.
But those wiretaps were put into place after Elizabeth was already back in Arizona. Isn't that true?
No.
So you don't know the dates of the wiretaps, but you know it was not after Elizabeth was brought back to Arizona?
It was this. I know the start was we presented it to the court, to the judge on January the 6th of 2010. I then left the state of Arizona. It was in place when I left the state of Arizona, so that I do know. I do not know the end of the wiretap.
And when was Elizabeth brought back to Arizona?
We arrived in the state on January the 9th of 2010.
Now, you've already stated that you didn't listen to any of Mr. Johnson's phone calls, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, did you listen to any of the Smith phone calls?
No.
And again, with all of those wiretaps, you never ended up getting any information about Gabriel, did you?
No.
And other than Ms. Smith, you did not investigate anyone else as a person of interest, did you?
No.
And in fact, you said back on March the 30th when we had an interview at the county attorney's office, as a person of interest, we didn't have any tips that led us specifically to anybody else, correct?
Correct.
And there was nobody else who was a primary focus in this case except Ms. Smith.
That's correct.
You told us a little bit about the hotline that was set up with the Tempe Police Department for tips. Who was in charge of that hotline again, please?
I don't know specifically who was in charge. I do recall that Sergeant Brudnock, who's my immediate supervisor, and Sergeant Luckow, they were working the tips. But in terms of the phone call and how dispatch worked that out, that information I do not know.
Now, you first went to the Smith home on December the 29th, correct?
Correct.
And that was after you first talked to Ms. Smith, and she agreed to do an interview with you, correct?
That's correct.
And that would have been the first interview that you did with her, correct?
That's correct.
So you went out to the house with Detective Ryberg, correct?
Yes.
And you talked to Ms. Smith and her husband.
Yes.
And at that point, neither of them were suspects.
That's correct.
And again, December the 29th was before Elizabeth was arrested.
Correct.
So you went to the Smith house again on December the 31st, correct?
Correct.
And this time you were unannounced. They didn't know you were coming.
That's true.
And so what happened on the 31st, since we did not listen to that recording, you came unannounced to the house, correct?
Correct.
And you knocked on the door, correct?
Correct.
And Jack opened the door?
Yes.
Jack that opened the door. And he invited you in, right?
Correct.
And you told him that the visit was not planned, correct?
Correct.
But he let you come in.
Yes.
And you sat down with the Smiths, I believe, in their kitchen, correct?
Correct.
And was that the visit that you told them Elizabeth had been arrested?
Yes.
And Ms. Smith's response to that was, you found the baby, wasn't it?
That's correct.
And again, that was the second visit to the Smith home.
Yes.
And then you went to their home a third time.
Correct.
Correct. And at that time, that third time, you had a search warrant.
Correct.
But their home had been previously searched, correct?
That's correct.
They had let the Tempe police search their home without a warrant a few days before that, correct?
Correct.
Now, we've heard a little bit of testimony about that search warrant. You went out to their home and with that search warrant around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, correct?
Correct.
And we heard Ms. Smith pleading with you to wait until the next morning for that search warrant to be executed, correct?
I don't know if she pleaded with me. She asked me
She was crying.
if we could serve it the next day.
And she was crying.
I don't recall her crying.
You didn't hear the recording that we listened to, I think, yesterday?
She was crying.
And she was crying because she was just asking you to wait till the next morning to serve that warrant, correct?
Yes.
And this was long after you and the other members of the Tempe Police Department knew that she did not have Gabriel at her home, wasn't it?
Correct.
And this was after you had already been there twice.
Correct.
And this was after Elizabeth had been arrested.
Yes.
And just for clarification, I'm sorry, January 14th, 2010 was the date of the warrant.
Correct.
Correct. So Elizabeth was already in custody back in Arizona, wasn't she?
That's correct.
And during the search of their home, you took Ms. Smith's computer, correct?
I didn't take it, but another detective did take it.
Thank you for correcting me. I meant the Tempe Police took it.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And someone at the Tempe Police Department did a forensic search of her computer?
A forensic search was not done on it.
And you did not seize anyone else's computer in this case, did you?
Tempe Police did not know.
Okay. No one seized Logan's computer?
That's correct.
No one seized Mr. Johnson's computer?
Correct.
No one seized Elizabeth's brother's computer?
That's correct.
Because it was Ms. Smith who was the focus of this investigation, correct?
I wouldn't say she was the focus of, let me correct that. For the search warrant was for her residence.
Wasn't she the focus of the investigation? Wasn't she the primary focus?
Well, the focus is Gabriel Johnson. She was an investigative lead, but if you're asking me who the focus was, it was Gabriel Johnson.
Let's talk a little bit about the court documents that we looked at. Again, I think this was Thursday. You looked at the family court documents, correct?
Correct.
And excuse me 1 second, Your Honor, may I approach the exhibit table?
You may.
I'm looking for exhibit 41, and I apologize for not pulling it sooner. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Detective, I'm showing you what's been admitted into evidence as exhibit number 41. Do you recognize those documents?
I do.
And those are the documents that just list the family court proceeding between Logan and Elizabeth, correct?
Correct.
And according to exhibit 41, Logan filed his petition to establish his paternity on December 11th, 2009, correct?
Correct.
And the very first hearing on that petition was on December the 17th, correct?
Correct.
And we've actually heard the recording of that very hearing many weeks ago, correct? Okay, and that was the day that the court established Logan's custody rights, on December the 17th, correct?
Correct.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
You may.
Now let's talk about Elizabeth. Elizabeth was arrested on January the 9th, you said, 2010? Or she was brought back here?
She was brought back.
Here on
Correct.
December
She was
the 9th.
arrested December 30th.
Correct. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. She was arrested in Miami on December the 30th.
Correct.
You went to Miami to retrieve her and brought her back here to Phoenix on January the 9th.
That is correct.
And you spoke to her at the jail.
Correct.
Correct? How many times did you speak to her here at the jail? Here in Phoenix.
Oh, in Phoenix, I'm sorry. One time.
And this morning we heard that visit where you had Elizabeth call Ms. Smith, correct?
Correct.
And we call that a confrontation call.
Correct.
Correct. And you were sitting there with Elizabeth at the jail when she made that call, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Andrews was also there?
She was.
And Elizabeth's two attorneys were there?
Correct.
And those were both female attorneys, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the purpose of your visit was to try and get Elizabeth to call Tammi, correct?
Correct.
And the purpose of that phone call was to try and get Tammi to confess to some crimes, correct?
No, the purpose of that phone call was to see if there would be any facts as to the whereabouts of Gabriel Johnson.
And because Elizabeth had not provided you with that information?
Correct. She had not participated in an interview with me.
Now, we heard that call this morning, and you testified that immediately following that phone call, Ms. Smith called you right away, didn't she?
She did.
And she called you to tell you, hey, guess what Elizabeth just called me, correct?
Correct.
Indicating that she didn't know that you were there with Elizabeth when that call was made.
Correct.
And again, that call took place after Elizabeth was back here in Arizona in jail.
Yes.
In fact, Elizabeth is still in jail, isn't she?
She is.
And she is charged with a number of crimes.
Correct.
Now, prior to Elizabeth calling Ms. Smith, that call that we heard this morning, you and Ms. Andrews talked to Elizabeth, didn't you?
That's correct.
And you recorded that conversation as well.
That's
didn't you?
correct.
Your Honor, at this time I move to admit Exhibit 229.
Do we want to show it to the state first?
Your Honor, I know what it is. That's fine.
You know what it is? And any objection?
Thank you. No objection.
Exhibit 229 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to publish.
You may. Can you tell the jury again what they're listening to?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell the jury again what they're listening to?
Yes, Your Honor. The jury is listening to the conversation that Detective Ramirez recorded with Elizabeth Johnson and with Ms. Andrews prior to the calling of Ms. Smith during the confrontation call, which they've already heard this morning. So this is the prequel, if you will, to the confrontation call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
New member, Angela Andrews, Bella Whitney. Pretty sure you've met Tricia before.
We flew. Yeah, actually went to Miami. So I hear you're okay with doing a confrontational phone call in terms of contacting Tammi?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I want to do it anymore.
Outside the presence of the jury, the report, I think, is that the juror is going to be able to continue. Is that correct? Okay, so we're going to be in good shape. Mr. Taylor's here. Mr. Smith's here. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're going to potentially do and give you some options with respect to how we're going to proceed. In a few minutes, maybe this afternoon, maybe tomorrow, I'm not sure. Ms. Phillips, did you decide, do we definitely want to go this afternoon or definitely wait till tomorrow?
Your Honor, I would prefer to wait till the morning, and I checked with Mr. Taylor and Mr. Smith, and that's convenient for them.
Okay. We'll still talk about it now while you're here. When you testify, presumably tomorrow, you're going to be asked questions by defense counsel. I think Ms. Phillips, you'll be cross-examined by the state, and then Ms. Phillips will get to ask more questions. Similar to what we talked about when I appointed an attorney for you a few weeks ago, there may be questions that you perceive might cause you to incriminate yourself. And let me step back. The Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees everyone the right to not be forced to testify, not be forced to incriminate themselves, and you can remain silent. And you have that right now. So even though you're being called to testify, you have the right to remain silent should you choose to do it. You can decide affirmatively that you would like to answer any question, but you have the right, if you believe that an answer might incriminate you, to decline to answer the question. So you now have an attorney here present. I wanted to talk to you about that, so when you're answering questions, you have that right. we can do this a couple different ways. We can have your attorney in the back available to you to confer with if you'd like. Some cases I've had attorneys right up next to the witness if they feel like there's a good chance that they're going to invoke their privilege, so the attorney can confer with them. So I wanted to talk to you about the best way to proceed, and your attorney as well, whether you want to be close, whether you're okay with being in the back, if you want to give me some guidance on how you'd like to proceed in that regard.
Yes, Your Honor. Benjamin Taylor on behalf of Mr. Smith. I've gone over the testimony with Mr. Smith and his constitutional rights, and he will want to testify in this case. I told him about he must testify honestly, and he's going to testify honestly. As far as if anything were to come up that he feels may or may not incriminate himself, I would ask that he is able to let the court know that he wants to have a break instead of, raising his hand or showing, any type of signs in front of the jury. So that's the only request that we would have.
Okay, and within reason, that's fine. If you feel like now there's a question that you're concerned about your answer and potentially incriminating yourself and you want to talk to your attorney, just look over to me and say, can we have a break? And I'll take that as a cue from you. Now, we can't do that every other answer because I'm going to be sending the jury out when you do that. But within reason, I'll let you confer with Mr. Taylor about your rights. I'm hearing that you're not anticipating doing that. And again, it's your right at any time if you want to assert your rights. But if you feel like you're at a point where you're concerned about that issue, you're concerned that an answer may incriminate you, then just look to me and say, can we take a break? I'll know what you're talking about, and we'll take a break and go forward that way. And Mr. Taylor can then sit in the back, and he won't be sitting right up. So that's how we'll do it. Any questions about either your Fifth Amendment rights, and I know you've talked to Mr. Taylor about it, or the procedure that we're going to use when you testify?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So as I understand it, Mr. Smith's not going to come back till tomorrow. I'm fine with that. We're at 3:40 now. So whenever we end, I'm okay with ending for the day. So you're free to go today,
okay.
And then come back tomorrow. We plan on starting around 10:30, and you may be up almost perhaps right away tomorrow morning.
All right.
All right?
I look forward to it.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. We're going to confirm that if you confirm that the jury's okay, then go ahead and bring them in. We're otherwise ready to go. Ms. Phillips, we're just going to pick up where you left off?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll do that. Let's go ahead and get the jury and come on back in. Okay, please be seated, everyone. We are back. The jury is present. Ms. Smith's present. Counsel are present. In a minute, we're going to start the audio tape back up. I have to tell you a story. We judges always think that we would like to be on a jury. In fact, we get called for jury duty just like you do. And typically, for whatever reason, we don't make it on a jury. But the reason we want to be on a jury, besides completing the same public service that you're completing right now, is to give us a real sense of what it's like to have to sit over there. It's one thing to sit here and observe trial, but you're on someone else's schedule, you're having to break up your lives somewhat unexpectedly, and it's a completely different dynamic. And I know that it's stressful and difficult at times, just the number of hours and how you have to listen. So to the extent you have any issue whatsoever, let me know. And I want to make sure that we don't put you in a position where it's tough for you physically in terms of being here and being able to continue. So let us know. We are well ahead of schedule, so we're in great shape, so there's no issues there. But let me know, and I certainly understand and respect how difficult it can be over there. So with that, we're going to get started. Again, we're going to pick up where we were in the audio. By way of reminder, this is exhibit, I think, is it 227 today?
229.
229. And Ms. Phillips, let me make sure we're queued up. Yep, we are. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I backed it up just a few seconds to where we left off.
Sounds like crazy worship music. So I want to make it simple for you so that it's easy on the phone, okay? Here, let me show you. And I'm going to break this down into smaller just so that you have like a one word in case she throws you off and if you want to look at this too. So basically what I want you to go over is that
it needs to make sense as to why you're calling her in terms of where I put that you can't hide this, you can't cover for them any longer, so that she understands. It's a confrontation phone call, and it needs to make sense as to why you're calling. So with that being said, if you want to cry, if you want to get angry, okay, we need this to be real. And so I always tell people, if you want to curse, you, in a sense, forget that I'm next to you. If you want to put your head down, like if you don't want to look at me. But what I will do, for example, is we'll use this desk, and if you're kind of struggling, I'm going to move a piece of paper to you to help guide you, okay? And so what I would like is the beginning, I just set up a minute or 30 seconds or whatever so that someone understands, okay, why are you calling me? And that's where I say you can go into, I can't do this any longer. I can't stay in here for 20 years for you guys. I can't hide this anymore. And I would say, unless you want to go a different direction, we're just going to talk about how you can't do this anymore for them. Okay. So again, because here's the thing to keep in mind, she will twist anything around. And that's where I feel for you, and that's why I'm here to help you with that. Okay? The next key thing is going to be that I want you to go over, those are your friends who you sent for Gabriel. And why that's a key is because from your statement, you're saying, okay, you're reporting to us that she sent people to you. From her side, she's saying, oh, absolutely not. I don't know. I mean, I worked for her that would have ended up helping you. And she is protecting herself to, I mean, she's number one in her head, and it doesn't even include Gabriel or you or anything. I need you to verify, this is key, that she actually sent a couple to you. Okay. We have gone crazy looking for a couple, but here's the deal. If you're in business, heck, that could be a zillion people. So when you say you've given us, this is going to help confirm it, because it's too hard. If you, right now, online, I think she has 3,000 friends. Okay, if you go online, I'm almost sure it's that high. Well, guess what? Manpower, it's almost, I mean, how can we go through and search? And it's easy to hide a baby that's healthy. Gabriel would be very easy to hide. Okay, if he doesn't have medical needs, and sadly, as days go by, you change. And most babies look so similar. So even that is hard to just throw his picture out there. And you could keep a baby home for a whole year.
That's what she said. A couple years now is good enough.
Elizabeth, my concern is, too, even though she told you it's perfect, you're in San Antonio, they have friends in San Antonio, it doesn't mean those people live in San Antonio. She could send them from anywhere to that part of the
And
they could have traveled. I mean, I don't know. And I don't remember the date that you said that you talked to her and the date that you actually went there. But people can travel pretty far in short periods of time.
All they have to do is get on a plane, or it could be to the state, it could be here, it could be anywhere. We don't know.
And that's why when you say, well, you know, you guys haven't found the baby, it is, in a sense, things are against us in terms of finding him, because it would be very easy to hide him. And she sticks to her story, and meanwhile you do the time. I mean, that's really what it's coming down to. She is sticking to her story, and you're stuck here doing the time. And bottom line, what also scares me is if she's crazy, then I don't know who she sent and how safe Gabriel is. Because I believe that we kind of attach to people who are similar to us. And so if she's kind of has extreme thinking, then who would she send that would even keep this baby? And that concerns me for who Gabriel is in the care of. I know that if I said to you on the plane or at some point, it's okay to adoption, no issue there, but you have to think about safety. And I don't know where he is, and that concerns me in terms of her. Okay. What do you think? Okay. The next part I have on here, that if she can hear the message to return, that she needs to get through to them, to return him to a church, to the police, to anywhere, but that she needs to get through to them and the baby needs to be returned. Okay. I want you to go over, like, that you set this up.
Okay, if she says, I don't know what you're talking about, then you can say, I need you to confirm that she's the one that is hiding, is the key to all of this. Okay. I do want you to go over that she, well, here's my question to you, and I asked them ahead of time. So during my interviews with her during the week in San Antonio, did she offer to hide you, to send you somewhere, to keep you away?
She wanted me to go to Tennessee because she had family connections. People who would hide me in a condo of someone, I forget whose condo it was, they would check and then would pay like a lesser fee and mean me to stay there. Or she had all these other ideas we could do and offered to hide me there until this all blew over and we figured out how we were going to work it out. But she was confident she was going to be able to find a way.
And in that, did she talk to you about changing jurisdiction? Like if you're in another state, changing jurisdiction?
Going to a different court?
Yeah.
She said I could do that. Go to a new court and probably get custody in a new court.
So,
my throat is confusing.
I think it just got water. But here's my question to that, and this is my question that I want her, why this is at the end. Did she talk to you about that, let's say, one night and only one night?
I think we all talked about a week or so.
It was all during the week?
I don't remember the first. We were talking about Arizona Day. It was kind of 3 times a day, back and forth.
Because what she's giving me in an interview is that basically, she had some alcohol, I was drinking one night, I was kind of, that her guard was down, and she talked to her maybe about hiding her, but she really stepped away from that, okay? And then she's glossed over. I've tried to get at that week because I'm like, this is BS. And she's like, no, and then I came to my senses the next morning. Then I came to my senses, and this was never discussed again. And that's why I want her to talk about, you offered to hide me during that week, and that's important in terms of time.
She kept pushing it and pushing it. I just didn't want to drive because I thought the car was a stolen vehicle. I didn't want to drive to Tennessee in the car.
Okay. And that's why that's kind of new of what I'm asking, is that it does come down to, it's important during the confrontation phone call, okay? Do you, so again, are you comfortable with where we are with that? Here's, I like to tell people, I don't know how it's going to turn on this side. We're dealing with another human being. She could refuse to stay on the phone. She could hang up the phone. I don't know what her reaction is going to be, but I want you to just remain strong through this, okay, and know that we'll talk about it when we get off the phone, okay? But sometimes I have a huge disappointment because this is very, very important. And in case if she wants to hang up the phone or she says I can't talk to you anymore, try to keep her on the line. Try to say no. You need to stay on here. You need to answer to me because I'm stuck here and you're out there and you have my baby. I mean, in many ways, she has your baby through someone else. Okay, so don't give up if she tries to stay on. Remember that this is evidence here. This will help you in so many ways.
Thank you, Your Honor. The end of that recording.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I have not, I'm sorry.
Would you have detailed rumors come back?
Your Honor, if I have not already done so, I move 229 into evidence.
I think you did.
I think it is already in,
It's in.
and I have no further questions of Detective Ramirez.
Do we have redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly.
Okay, Detective, come on up.
Detective, because it's driving my co-counsel nuts, do you remember what that background music was on the tape?
It was church music in the background.
There at the jail?
At the jail, yes.
Defense counsel asked you about the phone records, and you responded to her that you didn't review the phone records in this case specifically. What exactly was it that you reviewed in regard to the phone records?
The phone records were during briefing, then different detectives that actually had reviewed those records would go ahead and share what he or she found. So the phone records were, in a sense, reviewed all together.
Does that include the text messages?
That's correct.
And were you ever provided any of the information regarding the phone records or text messages in writing?
Yes, a graph was conducted completed, created for us from Lynn Orr, who is a crime analysis person for us.
And what did the graph depict?
The graph goes through text messages from Logan during the week of the last week of December. It also goes through Tammi Smith's text messages and then those of Elizabeth Johnson.
Now, Ms. Phillips asked you some questions about the wiretap and asked you if you listened to the calls from Tammy's phone and if you listened to the calls from Robert Johnson's phone, and your answer to that was no. Was it anybody's responsibility to provide information obtained in listening to those calls?
Yes. There were other detectives that were assigned that task. And, for example, Detective Coger was a person who listened to phone calls as well as some other detectives. I did drop into the room, which is, I don't want to say where it's at. I did drop into the room and I was given an update, and I did that on more than one time.
Ms. Phillips asked you about whether or not anyone other than the Smiths were persons of interest. First of all, what exactly is a person of interest?
Well, at the time, I mean, it's not a person who's a suspect, but that there are some concerns that we have in an investigation and that we cannot move away from the person of interest. Further follow-up needs to be conducted on that person. And so it's not the title of a suspect, but that a person is standing out in an investigation for further follow-up, which is what I continue to do when they became a person of interest.
If a person is not labeled a person of interest, does that mean other people aren't being investigated?
No.
Ms. Phillips asked you about the search warrant that occurred on January 14th, 2010, and she asked you about the Smith's home previously being searched. Do you recall that line of questioning?
Yes.
What were the officers looking for the first time the Smith's home was being searched?
The first time, which is going back to December 27th of 2009, was to look for Gabriel to see if he or Elizabeth Johnson on that Sunday night were actually at that residence.
And what was it that you and the other officers were looking for on January 14th, 2010, pursuant to the search warrant?
So the search warrant on that night was actually for electronic devices. It was for the computer, for cell phones, for any type of electronic communication. And so it was limited to that type of a search specifically.
And Ms. Phillips asked you some questions about the defendant being concerned about the time of day that search warrant was issued. What was the reason the search warrant was issued at that particular time of day?
It was to preserve evidence. She did know that, for example, that a search warrant, I had spoken to her, she had called me, but with any electronic device, phone, you can clear messages, your computer, you can erase items that are on your computer, so it was necessary that we serve that warrant immediately.
And what was it that caused you to request that search warrant at that particular time?
After she had left earlier in that interview on January 14th, she, just prior to leaving, had stated that she was going to go home, search through her computer, check emails. She had also made mention of doing research on the computer. She had just confessed to a crime, so the concern was that people panic and she could go home and clear things that would be of evidentiary value in this investigation.
And Ms. Phillips asked you about whether or not the defendant's computer was taken in the search warrant. And I believe you said the computer was taken. Was her computer actually taken?
No, and my correction, so the drive, what we did is we transferred it so that we could leave her computer. She did have a personal business, and I believe Detective Bailey explained that it wasn't necessary for us to take her computer, but we did transfer it, and so we actually had her hard drive.
So her computer was left?
Yes.
Did Detective Bailey do any kind of examination on the computer, a preview or anything to see what was on there?
He did what's called a preview. So a forensic examination wasn't done, but a preview was completed by him.
And were there any concerns expressed from that preview?
Detective Bailey did tell me that there appeared to be signs.
Hearsay?
Sustained.
Based on the preview, did you have any concerns about whether or not you'd be able to find, and this is a yes or no question, did you have any concerns about whether or not you'd be able to find certain evidence that you were looking for?
Yes.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we let Detective Ramirez step down, does the jury have any questions for her? Going once, going twice. I don't think we're excusing her because I think she's going to come down and sit here, so you may step down. Thank you, Detective. Does the state have any further witnesses?
Your Honor, at this time, the state rests.
Okay, the state has rested its case, which means should the defendant choose to present evidence, we would move to that point. But usually when we're right at the end of the day, I don't like to start transitioning into the next phase, which would be the defense case. So we're going to wait to start that till tomorrow. I believe the defendant is going to present some evidence. So we will start that tomorrow morning, first thing, at 10:30. So we're going to take a little bit early recess tonight. Until tomorrow at 10:30, remember the admonition, and we will see you tomorrow. We are outside the presence of the jury. What I thought we would do now is discuss, and I would presumably rule on defendant's motion for directed verdict. The motion is in written form, and I did read it during the break. Ms. Andrews, have you had a chance to review the motion?
I have, Your Honor.
Okay, you prepared to discuss it at this point?
I am.
Okay, let me start with Ms. Phillips. Ms. Phillips, anything you want to add to the motion or anything you want to amplify in the motion?
Your Honor, I don't think I have anything to add. I will stand on the written motion, but reserve the right to reply to Ms. Andrews' response.
Okay, Ms. Andrews?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, in regard to the conspiracy to commit custodial interference, the charge is between the dates of December 8th and December 28th, 2009. First of all, Your Honor, the state doesn't have to prove that Logan had custody on December 8th. We only have to prove that the defendant and the co-conspirator conspired to interfere with his custody during the time frame charged. Second of all, Your Honor, the state doesn't even have to prove that the custodial interference was completed. We only have to show that the conspiracy occurred, not that the actual offense that they conspired was ever completed. And so, Your Honor, the evidence that we have in regard to the conspiracy to commit custodial interference is that once Elizabeth Johnson, well, first of all, the evidence is that they started talking about how to make sure that Logan didn't have custody rights, which started on the day they went to the courthouse and filed the paperwork and the forged document was filed. In the conversations the defendant had with the detective, she told the detective that they were going to try and stress Logan until he gave up his rights. Some of the things they talked about in order to stress Logan was to delay the time that he was found the father by interfering with the paternity, by suggesting there were other fathers and having other people take paternity tests. The defendant also told the detective that they wanted to stress Logan by forcing him to pay back child support, although the evidence is that Logan didn't owe any back child support, being that he moved out on December 8th, 2009. But the defendant's opinion was that they were going to try and force Logan to pay back child support, keep making him come to court, that eventually he would go to jail and eventually he would give up his rights. Additionally, Your Honor, the state has presented evidence that while Elizabeth Johnson was in San Antonio, and while she had absolutely no connections to Tennessee, the defendant talked to her on several occasions, suggested that the defendant go to Tennessee, that Elizabeth Johnson go to Tennessee, suggested that Elizabeth Johnson could stay in the defendant's stepson's condo in Tennessee, suggested that the defendant could stay in the home that the defendant and her husband were renovating in Tennessee, set her up with phone conversations with people who lived and worked in Tennessee, looked into and talked to Elizabeth Johnson about changing jurisdictions to Tennessee so that another court could issue an order that I believe we can infer would supersede or the order that was issued already in Arizona. And, Your Honor, we've presented evidence that not only did the defendant admit to doing these things in regard to Tennessee, but we have statements from Elizabeth Johnson herself. In fact, even in this recording we just heard, that she had conversations with the defendant for a week period about going to Tennessee and changing jurisdictions. And the evidence we have that's been presented based on Elizabeth Johnson's statements is we have her GPS device that was found on her, that she actually put an address in Tennessee in that GPS device. And we have evidence from 2 different occasions of Elizabeth Johnson indicating that it was just too far for her to go to Tennessee. In fact, in this last recording, she said she was afraid to drive to Tennessee because she was in her grandfather's car, which was reported as stolen. And, Your Honor, additionally, in regard to the conspiracy to commit custodial interference, we have evidence that the defendant tried to get Logan to sign adoption papers, and there was evidence about waiting the 5 days to make sure that the adoption papers went through. Your Honor, the evidence we have in regard to that, we have the text messages that the defendant sent to Logan, telling Logan he needed to sign the paperwork so that Elizabeth Johnson would come back or he would never see his son again. We have the text messages that happened in January where the defendant sent a text message to someone out of state indicating that the plan was for them to sign these adoption papers and wait 5 days so that neither Logan nor his father could get the baby. We have evidence that the defendant herself told the detective that she told Logan Elizabeth wanted him to sign these adoption papers. That in and of itself is an admission to conspiracy, because the fact that the defendant claims she told Logan what Elizabeth wanted is that she was telling Logan to sign these adoption papers because that's what Elizabeth wanted. So that in and of itself, even if you believe exactly what the defendant said, is an admission to conspiracy to commit custodial interference. And, Your Honor, we've presented a lot of other evidence that goes to her intent, about her desire to interfere with custody. We have her desire to adopt a child. We have statements she made to Rachel Hoover about putting Jack Smith's name on Rachel Hoover's child's birth certificate. And that's 404 evidence that can only be used for intent, motive, common scheme, or plan. We have evidence, similar evidence about in talking to Deanna Ayala about wanting to put her husband's name on the court document. We have evidence where the defendant herself told the detective, actually without being asked, about how she may have discussed with Elizabeth Johnson what happened in regard to the adoption of their child Hannah and the default that they got based on that father defaulting his rights because he didn't know about the court hearings, or that's not exactly what was said, but I believe her words were the default. The father defaulted. And I'll just leave it at that because that's what her words were. So, Your Honor, I think we have more than sufficient evidence to show that there was a conspiracy to commit custodial interference. I will point out, and I'm not sure if the defense attorney meant to imply that or not, but she talked about the fact in the motion that there's no evidence that the defendant assisted Elizabeth Johnson in going to San Antonio. There's some degree of evidence or perhaps some implied information on that, but we don't have to prove that. We don't have to prove one way or another that the conspiracy to commit custodial interference even involved Elizabeth Johnson leaving the state. Essentially, we just have to prove they conspired to commit custodial interference. Whether or not someone left the state makes a difference on what class of felony it is for custodial interference, and we may have to sit down and discuss an appropriate verdict form that would help guide the court in what class of felony it would be if there was a conviction, but it's not what we have to prove in the case. We don't have to prove, for proving conspiracy to commit custodial interference, in this case, we don't have to prove anybody left the state. We just have to prove they conspired to interfere with Logan's custody, regardless of where they were. And so, Your Honor, I'm going to move on to the forgery charge. The defendant, and I'm not sure when she drafted this, but the defendant states that there is no evidence that it's even Tammi Smith's handwriting on the document, and perhaps it was drafted before that evidence was presented. But we have the defendant's own admission to the detective where she actually read out a statement that she wrote on the document involving Craig Cherry to the detective in the interview. We have the defendant's admission to the media after that interview. And then, Your Honor, I don't know that you actually saw it, but we have Alan Kreidel's written report where he did the handwriting analysis and analyzed that it was the defendant's handwriting based on the handwriting sample that was given. And I submit to the court that the handwriting sample that was given was clearly the defendant's based on the content and based on the fact that it was obtained during the search warrant of her home. Your Honor, based on all of that, we believe we certainly have presented more than sufficient evidence to survive motion for directed verdict in this case, and we'd ask the court deny the motion.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips?
Thank you, Your Honor. Very briefly, I know Your Honor has been taking copious notes and paying attention very well throughout this trial, so I'm not going to go through every single piece of everything that we've heard, I'm sure much to your relief. Your Honor, this case is full of evidence that Elizabeth acted on her own. There was no conspiracy. First of all, legally, there could be no conspiracy until December the 17th when Logan had his custodial rights established by the court. Judge, I think the statute is very clear, 1302B, which provides that if a child is born out of wedlock, the mother is the legal custodian of the child until paternity is established. And I state that in my motion. Therefore, Your Honor, it's very clear under the law Logan had no rights until December the 17th. On December the 18th, the Smiths returned the baby to Elizabeth. Elizabeth left the state. There is no evidence that suggests that there was a conspiracy for Elizabeth to leave the state. And, Your Honor, I think in this particular case, it's absolutely critical that she left the state because we've heard Elizabeth testify in this case through the recordings. She says specifically during the free talk that it was her idea to leave to go to San Antonio. And so, Your Honor, any conversation, if Your Honor thinks that any of those conversations happen to rise to the level of conspiracy, which obviously we don't think they do, Ms. Smith had no connection to Elizabeth literally after the 18th when she left. Yes, they had conversations, but Ms. Smith, who has also indirectly testified in this case through all of the recordings that we've heard, said everything she did was to try and get Elizabeth back. How many times have we heard that in the last couple of weeks? Everything she did was to try and get Elizabeth back. She did research a change of jurisdiction, but she did some research. That doesn't rise to the level of conspiracy. Ms. Smith had Elizabeth call Janet Morris in Tennessee. Janet Morris told her, go back to Arizona. Everybody, including Ms. Smith, told Elizabeth, go back to Arizona. There was no conspiracy to keep the child from Logan after December the 17th. And as for the forgery count, Your Honor, the state has failed to prove that there was any intent on Ms. Smith's behalf to defraud anyone. It was Elizabeth who signed those documents. Whether or not the court feels that the state has proven that it was Ms. Smith who wrote Craig Cherry's name, it was Elizabeth who signed those documents. We heard from Ms. Smith again through her indirect testimony that she did not know that those documents were going to be filed. She thought, mistakenly, granted, but she thought that Elizabeth was going to be mailing those documents to Logan and that she, in fact, provided the stamps to mail those documents. And, Your Honor, finally, there can be no intent to defraud. The intent was to make Logan take a DNA test because Elizabeth had told Ms. Smith that there was another potential father. No DNA test became necessary, and Elizabeth ended up stipulating to paternity. So, Your Honor, there was ultimately no fraud on the court. So for those reasons, Your Honor, we submit that the state has failed to prove the case on both of these charges, and we're asking the court to direct a verdict. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Andrews, could you address one issue, and that's the argument that until December 17th, there were no custodial rights flowing to Logan McQueary, and therefore there couldn't be a conspiracy to interfere with custodial rights?
Well, Your Honor, first of all, in this case, it's charged from December 8th to December 28th, so it doesn't matter that it was December 17th because it's on or between those dates.
Well, I agree. I agree, and I understand that. And I understand that we're talking about much more than what happened before the 17th, but I am interested in the answer to that question because that could affect instructions and perhaps other things going forward.
And Your Honor, first of all, I will point out that in the custody hearing on December 17th, 2009, Judge McVeigh, who appeared as a family court judge, indicated to the parties that the presumption is that Logan's the father because he is on the birth certificate. Your Honor, they were aware as of December 11th, 2009, that Logan was filing for custody because, for one, Alicia Shumway from CPS advised Elizabeth Johnson of that, and they were aware on December 14th that Logan had filed for custody because they were responding. So they knew that Logan was seeking out his custody rights, and they were already interfering with his attempt to have custody rights. They were interfering with those custody rights.
And I don't want to get into too much of an academic discussion, but I can seek to interfere with somebody's rights, but I can't be prosecuted for that unless they really have the rights. That is, if they don't have the rights, there's not an interference with custodial rights, is there?
Well, but Your Honor, in this case, it's a conspiracy that began on December 8th for an offense that went through the 28th, and during that time period, he did get rights. If he'd never gotten those rights during December 8th to December 28th, then the defense might have a different argument.
Well, and I agree with you.
I don't know that they would.
I agree with you that certainly, and I'm going to rule that beyond a certain date, certainly for Rule 20 purposes, I think the state's met its burden on that issue. But I am concerned about acts that occurred or are alleged to have occurred before the 17th. I know you can say it's part of a continuing conspiracy, but if I commit the acts before there was legal custody, I'm concerned about whether that's particularly relevant and whether in isolation it would support an interference or a conspiracy to commit custodial interference. I'm going to find here that from my perspective, post-December 17th at least, there were acts sufficient to support the conspiracy to commit custodial interference charge. But I am concerned about the effect of the legal argument that if there were no custody rights before December 17th, then really anything that occurred before that can't be a conspiracy to commit custodial interference. At least just logically that makes sense to me, and I'm having trouble getting beyond that. And I'm not sure what that all means going forward, but I do have a concern about it.
And Your Honor, I'll tell you that what we're required to show is that they had a common criminal objective. And so we need to show that when that objective, when that plan started, when they first started talking about what they were going to do, to make sure that Logan didn't have his rights. And their conversations about that began before he even filed for custody.
Again, and we're going to have a variation of this discussion at the very least when we talk about jury instructions, because while I understand what you're saying, if he didn't have custody, then how can you support a conspiracy claim to interfere with those custodial rights if there aren't custodial rights as of that point? Again, to me, there's sufficient evidence, at least from the 17th forward, at the time that Judge McVeigh's order was issued. But I do have a concern about pre-December 17th. And I guess the question is, if we had no acts from December 17th forward, legally, could there be a conspiracy to commit custodial interference? And I'm not sure there could be. But again, I'm looking at the defense argument for the first time, but I do have concerns about that issue. But I do think that there is sufficient evidence from December 17th forward, in part because of certainly acts that occurred afterwards and accepting the evidence that Elizabeth Johnson herself said it was her idea to go to San Antonio. I think you can have a conspiracy count without the conspiracy extending to her leaving the state. You can commit the offense without someone leaving the jurisdiction. You can interfere with the rights. And I do think the acts of trying to make it difficult on Mr. McQueary in terms of the paternity issue, the back child support. I do think the discussions potentially about going to Tennessee, going to another jurisdiction, and perhaps defeating the court order. It can be interpreted as an interference with the custodial rights, or a conspiracy to commit interference with the custodial rights of Mr. McQueary. And also the evidence regarding what Ms. Smith told various individuals about what it would take Ms. Johnson to take, what it would take for Ms. Johnson to come back, specifically Mr. McQueary signing the adoption papers and there being a 5-day waiting period. I think that at least gives the jury a basis to find that there was a conspiracy to commit custodial interference. Again, I do have a concern about pre-December 17th. With respect to the forgery count, to me that one's clearer. Ms. Smith has admitted that she did write Mr. Cherry's name down. To me, despite the indirect testimony by Ms. Smith that she thought that the document would just go to Mr. McQueary, I think it's also reasonable to conclude that she knew or should have known that the document would be filed with the court, that there was an intent to mislead the court as to the real status of the paternity, and she knew that the document was false. The fact that Ms. Johnson signed it, I don't think matters legally. I think that there is enough evidence to support the state's position that Ms. Smith affirmatively understood that she was fraudulently completing the document and the purpose that it would be used. And so I do think that the state has met its obligation as to both counts under Rule 20, and there is not a showing that there's no substantial evidence to warrant a conviction as required in Rule 20 for there to be a directed verdict. So the motion for directed verdict under Rule 20 is denied for the reasons set forth. Okay. All right, so tomorrow we've got, are we going to start with Mr. Smith?
We are, Your Honor.
Okay, and then get to Ms. Smith right away after that?
I imagine we will get to Ms. Smith then shortly after.
Okay.
Well, we will put on Ms. Smith after Mr. Smith, whatever time that is.
And as we've discussed before, the third witness cannot start till Thursday morning.
That's correct.
And if there's a gap, there's a gap. If we finish early Wednesday, we finish early and we'll just get to it Thursday. Okay, anything else we need to talk about from anyone's perspective? Ms. Sanders?
Your Honor, I do have another statement regarding your concern about custodial interference.
Okay.
I will point out the statute itself says the crime of custodial interference requires proof that the defendant, and subsection 1 is what you're talking about, took, enticed, or kept from lawful custody any child entrusted by authority of law.
Slow down.
Law to the custody of another person. And Your Honor, and that's where it talks about out of wedlock children are assumed to be in the custody of the mother. But if you look further in subsection 1, it also states, or before a court order determining custodial rights, denying that parent access to any child, took, enticed, or kept any child from the other parent. And that's where we believe that Logan's rights come in.
That does, I think, address at least some of my concern relating to pre-December 17th acts. Okay. Ms. Phillips, anything from your perspective? Anything else we need to talk about?
Well, Your Honor, since she brought it up, I kind of thought we had settled this, but that's okay. It's only 4:22. Judge, I think subsection B of 1302 was placed there for a reason. Clearly, the legislature felt that there was some ambiguity in subsections A and 1 and 2 that they put B in there. B applies to the specific situation. I'm guessing, I don't know because I'm not sure how the legislature thinks, that A2 perhaps applies to a parent in perhaps a marital situation. And I don't know, Your Honor. I'm arguing that because B addresses specifically a child born out of wedlock.
So I would submit, Your Honor, that A1 applies to a parent. It says withholds any child from the other parent. The language says withholds any child from the other parent, implying that that subsection applies to parents, not other people.
Okay, well, let me look at the full statute. We may have a continuation of this discussion before closing arguments and while we're settling jury instructions. But right now, regardless of the interpretation, I do think that the state has presented sufficient evidence under Rule 20 to survive a Rule 20 motion. Okay, so tomorrow, 10:30, we'll start with Mr. Smith, and I'll see everybody tomorrow at 10:30.